MYConversations. Today, we're going to be talking about something very important, something that needs to be understood from the within and not just from textbooks or from videos or from, just here and there on social media, but something to be addressed and understood quite deeply. So, if I can please ask you to introduce yourself and we'll get into it.
Hi, Komal. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And hello to the audience. I'm Vijay Nallawala from Mumbai. I am founder of Bipolar India. Uh, been living with this condition for over 4 decades, and currently I'm managing trustee of Mental Health Support Foundation. Yeah, that's what I am about, and that's why we are going to discuss what bipolar disorder is, and what are the perceptions around it, and what are the actual facts that the audience might benefit from learning. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vijay, for being here. We appreciate that. And like you said, we're going to be talking about bipolar disorder and
Yeah.
the more trends that we see in mental health today. While, yes, conversation in mental health is increasing, awareness is increasing, but so are the words. And because the words are out there, oftentimes they're just being thrown around, misunderstood, used very casually in conversations. And yes, while we do understand that bipolar talks about mood, we often see that, especially on social media, that anyone with extreme mood swings or, when we see situations where somebody's mood is just fluctuating here and there, it's labeled as bipolar. Is it really this simplistic? Is what I would like to understand. And if you could highlight what is the experience actually like and how is it so different from just mood swings?
Yeah, sure. That's a great beginner, Komal. So yes, in fact, I find it a bit discomforting when I look at all the social media communication, even the memes that are circulated around bipolar disorder. The typical happy grinning face and one which is dejected. Are human beings living lives in such a binary? They aren't, right? Yeah, it isn't. That's not at all aligned with what the experience actually is. So sure, bipolar disorder is about extreme mood swings. I mean, that is the core feature of the disorder, but it entails a lot more than what is sort of communicated in public domain, right? Now, for instance, and also there are layers to these mood swings, right? You have depression, depression also has different levels of severity from mild, moderate to severe, where a person cannot even possibly get out of bed sometimes, right? Every single activity feels like climbing a mountain, to the milder forms of the elevated mood phase, which is known as hypomania, where the person is more productive, is more energetic, I mean, there is less inhibition, more of a need to go out, and the destructive phase of mania, where the judgment is of the person is impaired. The person can be very reckless, and then it leads to a lot of uh, you know unwanted kind of a behavior, and the consequences can be imagined thereof, right? Also, it's again, as you pointed out, it might be too simplistic to limit it to only mood shifts. Beyond all of this, there is a person, right? Yeah. So it's not that it's always that a person is in the throes of these serious episodes. A person can have a very long phase of so-called normal mood phase also. Uh, It's essential to also understand that what do these normal so-called normal mood phases actually look like. I mean, if you look at the baseline of moods where a person would want to be, and nobody's ever at the perfectly at the right point at the baseline. Every human being would be up and down a little bit, but it is an extreme swing in bipolar disorder. All right. So there are issues with confidence, issues with cognitive dysfunction in people. So there is a lot of baggage which is not sort of highlighted in the communication which we typically see around bipolar disorder, unfortunately. Yeah. And also all these self doubts. I mean, what a person has enough time to ruminate over all the indiscretions during mania. So even after the episode goes, there is a lot of stuff for the person to deal with, right? It's easy to sort of
Absolutely.
imagine.
Since you
Yeah.
did point out about the phases that a person
Yeah.
might be going through when they do
Yeah.
have bipolar disorder. A lot of times we also see that being assumed that bipolar disorder, if somebody has it, then they can't function or be exactly a part of society, and how true is that?
think that is one myth that really needs to be busted as soon as possible. I think it has also to do with the very stereotypes you talked about at the outset, because it paints a person as somebody completely. I mean, a person who is living only in the extremes has nothing to do with whatever we connote as normalcy, and these are the stereotypes which make people believe that how can a person like that have anything like a normal relationship, hold on to a job, or live a life like anybody else. That's hardly true, right? So we lead a pan-India community, Komal, and I see so many success stories. Of course, there's struggles, stories of struggle as well. That's how it is, because it's on a spectrum, right? And recovery is a journey. Not everybody is there on at that level of sort of desired stability at every point of time.
Yeah.
But there is a vast chunk of people who are managing themselves very well. They are very super functional, and it's not that persons with bipolar disorder lack in intelligence or capability. In fact, it might be in the other way around. Some of the most creative minds through history have lived with this condition. So, so what the person actually needs is an enabling environment. And it begins at family level, because family can be such a big support system, right? It begins there. At the workplace, a support in a conducive environment, which offers reasonable accommodation for a person with coming in with a disability. And given this kind of environment, a person can, really thrive, irrespective of the label person carries.
And while you do mention that having that sort of environment becomes important, and you have seen success stories, but you know since we did talk about a little bit about it's not just extremes of mood or so how it's often portrayed, how do you feel bipolar disorder can sort of manifest in a person, and what are some things that help us understand? Because not everybody, for the third person, not everybody might understand very quickly that, oh, this is the sort of environment or this is how I can support this person.
So, I think this is a key question, because very interestingly, in our community we have seen certain peers joining the community, and guess who had brought them in? A neighbor or a close friend to the person, who observed that maybe this person has certain symptoms which resemble bipolar disorder. So
Yeah.
the vigilance on behalf of that friend who played such a stellar role, right, in say, being the helping hand, sort of nudging the person to seek professional help. So yes, our being aware about these kind of symptoms can go a long way in sort of firstly mitigating stigma and busting stereotypes around the disorder, and also being able to offer such timely help to person in need. So firstly, we know about the genetics about a bipolar disorder. There is a strong genetic link. There is also the saying that bipolar disorder runs in families. Yeah. But then, of course, it's not only genes. There are other aspects also involved in this. Also, we talked about a conducive environment. So even if there is biological loading, as if I were to use this term, in a person in a very nurturing environment, especially during one's childhood or at adolescence, those are the key years, formative years, one could say. That could, even if the person is carrying the genes which would sort of lead to bipolar disorder going on down the years, a good nurturing environment can also ensure that the person actually doesn't manifest the disorder, right?
Absolutely.
And conversely, we often see that extreme stressors, trauma that a person faces. We know about ACE, adverse childhood experiences. That is what precipitates a person towards manifesting the symptoms. Although the biology is already there, the person doesn't choose the biology, does it? Yeah. So the early signs, typically the symptoms can show up during, say, adolescence, or in some people in their 20s, 25, around that age. And the shocking part is globally there is a gap between onset and diagnosis of a decade, right? And you can imagine how critical that is to, sort of nip it in the bud, sort of bring in early intervention so that we get better outcomes. So it's very crucial to be aware about what the symptoms are. So it's very similar to what I described earlier, but what sort of comes across in a young child or in a teen can look very different from what I described. So it can be just be irritability, withdrawal, academics plunging without any other reason being sort of, justifying that kind of a plunge in performance, right? Sometimes it could be substance abuse, because the person needs an outlet to sort of face what the person is dealing with. It could be, the outright signs of depression, but which again manifests differently in that age group, right? Yeah. So, the signs are very subtle, honestly, and it might be easy to sort of brush them under the carpet. These are teenage problems, hormonal changes that the person is dealing with, which actually happened in my case as well. Yeah. But I would say, apart from, sort of us jumping to a label and then, look, this looks like bipolar disorder, this looks like a personality disorder. It's just uh, seeking professional help and trying to make sense of what's happening to the person. Yeah, Komal. I think that would be a better way to go about it.
Absolutely. I think, I understand when you say that understanding is the key, because while there are subtle signs, there are signs.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not, that, oh, how could we have known? Uh, So yes, we certainly need to equip ourselves a little better in understanding, observing, not brushing things just under the carpet. And Vijay, I'd like to
Also, to add to that, sorry, to add to that, Komal, uh, typically bipolar disorder is diagnosed during the elevated mood phases.
absolutely.
Yeah, because there have been a history of misdiagnosis of persons with bipolar disorder being diagnosed with major depressive disorder. One of the reasons which is for that is, which is very interesting, is hypomania is very difficult to spot even for the person. We just feel we are more energetic, we are at our best, and I mean, where is the problem then, right? It is depression, which is a very sort of visible kind of a struggle for the person and for the family around the person, right? So even to a trained eye, hypomania can go under the radar. It's typically diagnosis happens during mania, because that's where it's completely awry. I mean, things are off and person is so agitated and all over the place that it's easier to spot, but unfortunately sometimes a lot of damage happens until then.
Makes sense. So while we do talk about the person having bipolar disorder, what do you
Yeah.
feel, is there any significant way in which this impacts the people that are around them? Be it family, friends, colleagues, perhaps, somebody who's a caretaker, somebody who they are a caretaker or caregiver to.
Sure. In fact, see, I would say this from my experience, and so what I see all around me is, it's not just a single person who lives with the disorder. It's an entire family who either struggles or thrives along with the person. Yeah, let's also accept, especially in the Indian context with our culture, where families are so well knit and supportive in major cases. So yes, it does sort of involve family at a very intricate and intense level. There are multiple challenges here. What is the awareness level among the family members? Are they psycho-educated enough to understand what the person is going through? The challenge is to distinguish between what we term as laziness, or what are the symptoms of the disorder which causes this behavior. What is the role of parenting in such cases? So it is very nuanced. So I think the one suggestion I can give to family carers who would be in this conversation is to arm yourself with as much knowledge as you can. right? A known devil is better than an unknown devil, as we say. If we know exactly what we are dealing with, it's easier to sort of uh, put in our best foot forward and be supportive to the person. Second thing is important for the family members to understand that recovery can be a long process, right? Yeah, and it can be deeply frustrating for the person. So whether be it a sibling, be it even a child of the parent going through this trials, spouse, whoever, whatever the relationship we are talking about. So, I mean, the typical reaction can be like, look, he's been or she's been on treatment for 6 years, and I do not see much of improvement, or it's such a roller coaster of a ride, and can drain out the person also, because caring is also not so easy. It's easier said than done. Being in the person's shoes, going through this sort of struggle, and the sense of helplessness and hopelessness also that comes in there. The other thing that other suggestion is to join support groups for the carers, for themselves, right? Because then you at least have a connect where you can sort of open up. And the last thing is carers themselves might need mental health support, right? In the form of therapy. I mean, that is the level of sort of stress and anxiety that they undergo.
Absolutely. And that does make me, think about that. Yes, support groups, any sort of support and psychoeducation, letting them know and allowing them that you're not alone, you know, is a key factor there. And yes, patience is 100%, like you very correctly pointed out, patience is required, and that patience can be frustrating at times because a lot of the times, a lot of these things are not in your control. So to just sit with it, that okay, this is something that I have to manage, uh, can be difficult, and support does matter there. Vijay, over the years, how has your experience been with those who have bipolar, and is it any similar to how perhaps it is portrayed in movies or books or, you know, just content consumption platforms?
Interesting question, the Komal. In fact, that's what the contrast is like. Just like it is in outside life that we see around us, right? We see extreme polarities in life as well, even if we are not discussing bipolar disorder here. So there are people who are super functional. I mean, uh, occupying the responsible positions in the corporate world, very high achieving professionals in their fields, consultants, very successful in their family life. And there is that part of the spectrum which we cannot brush under the carpet as well. People who continue to struggle. Uh, Also, we know that the same treatment might not be effective across the cohort of persons seeking treatment. Some people who are, the response to treatment is not universal, is not exactly the same. It doesn't come across exactly the same between me, let's say, and somebody else. Somebody needs much more time for the recovery process to happen, for functionality and that level of stability, what we talk about remission, to be achieved. So yes, well, of course, it's not as dramatic as what is portrayed in mass media or in cinema, or because it's dramatized, obviously, with a certain objective in mind, right? Because reality doesn't sell so well, does it? Yeah, but yes. I have seen dramatic stories even in real life, and they can be deeply disturbing. And on the other hand, and they can be exhilarating also when you see the super successes of people having transcended all of these challenges that we are talking about and recreate their lives.
Um, Vijay, to those who've been recently diagnosed, what is your message to them?
Firstly, I would say that at the outset, I was overwhelmed when I was told that I am living with. At that time, it was known as manic depressive illness, and I was told in very blunt terms that I would be living with this condition for my rest of my life. So my world had crashed around completely. Yeah. So I guess it might be a similar feeling for many people. To many people, it comes as a relief also. Yeah, that at least now I have a handle on what I'm dealing with. So I felt that I was all over the place, that I couldn't make a sense of things. But now at least I know that there was this thing that was causing all this kind of stuff in my life, right? So for some, it comes as a relief also. Yeah. And so the message that I would say to them is, if you are in this phase of not knowing what's lying ahead of you, it's all more grayish than any clarity that you can see on the path ahead. Stick onto the path. Treatment is a key component of the recovery process. So, diligence about going consultations with your psychiatrist, sort of also being disciplined in following whatever his or her suggestions and advices. Uh, Cooperating with the family, because at the end of the day, everybody's on the same team. Nobody's sort of fighting against it. Everybody's on the same team, trying to get over this issue. Be very patient about this process. Yeah, because what happens is, just when you're feeling well and you feel like, now, okay, now I've reached a level of stability, and then we see that crash happening, or an episode rearing up its head again, and that can be very demotivating for the person. But if you stay invested for a reasonable amount of time, live a life of discipline, there's no reason to question your ability to live a life, like you would aspire to, right? Yeah. So we call it remission. I have been completely episode free for the last 7 8 years now, right? I'm on minimal medications. So that is a possibility. There is a lot of grind which went before I came to this situation. But yes, it is doable. And I've seen a lot of people around me also who are in this so-called happy space. Yeah. So hang in there, but believe in yourselves, do all the right things that will nurture your health and take you forward in this journey.
Thank you so much for saying that, Vijay. To end our conversation, um,
Yeah,
this is the question that we asked to all our guests. What is
yeah.
something that we should make ourselves comfortable with?
Uh, I think when we are talking about disorder specifically, Kumar, about uncertainty, right? About change. We all, we desire constancy, certainty in our lives, but this is one condition which throws away all of that out of the window, right? So let's embrace that uncertainty also, right? And be comfortable with it, right? That, all right, there will be a lot of things I'll be unprepared for, but I'll be resourceful enough to deal with it
Absolutely.
come the time. Yeah,
Love that answer. Uncertainty.
yeah, yeah,
Very lightly connected also. But yes, it will, this is how it is. So
yeah,
better to make ourselves comfortable with it so that we equip ourselves also to manage it. Because even if we're equipped to manage it, we might, if we're not comfortable with it, we might just be in that loop constantly, feeling bad, having all sorts of negative thoughts and feelings, wanting to get out of it, somehow. So thank you for that answer. I really appreciate you sharing that and
thank you so
sharing
much.
everything that you did today. It was rather informational, but also quite insightful because you're sharing from experiences and knowledge together, which I think is most powerful for any conversation that requires understanding and requires some seriousness to go to the depths of it. So I really appreciate you sharing everything you did today. Thank you so much, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Komal, for having me on this show. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for watching.